Today on Weekly Wrap-Up, Ukraine stops Russian breakthrough on the front line and pockets Russian troops. Trump wants Europe to ban Russian oil. How effective is that? Russian economy suffers. Sanctions pressure is mounting. Hello, we are UATV. I am Henry Keane, and you, as usually, are sincerely welcome to the Weekly Wrap-Up. Ukrainian troops are conducting a counter-offensive operation in the Donetsk direction. President Volodymyr Zelensky reported that since the beginning of the operation, our forces have liberated as much as 330 square kilometers in total and 16 communities cleared of Russian presence completely.
We are now conducting one of our counter-offensive operations in the Donetsk direction, and our guys are performing brilliantly in the Kursk and Dobropillia areas. The fighting is intense, but we have inflicted significant losses on the Russians. In effect, our forces are depriving the occupiers of the ability to carry out the full-scale offensive in this direction that they had long planned and relied on. Their first attempt was in the Sumy region. Now it's here. Ukrainian units are delivering results for Ukraine. I thank everyone involved. The operation continues as we planned. This is an important success for Ukraine. Any group of occupiers attempting to enter this area is being destroyed by our guys.
The Ukrainian Armed Forces operation in the Dobropillia direction is going very well indeed, and Russian troops are gradually being pocketed, confirms the head of the Assault Troops Directorate, Valentin Manko. According to him, the enemy is throwing everything they have to hold the access. However, with their logistics disrupted, units are just cut off from each other, and the Central Command, it is highly unlikely to happen.
The operation that was launched specifically in the Dobropillia direction, where there were rabbit ears, saw the first small encirclement, then a larger one, and now the third one has been completed. I can't say it's been completed 100% because the enemy has now thrown in all available forces from all directions, specifically toward the Kursk and Dobropillia directions, to try to hold their positions. They're trying to hold on to the areas they managed to break into, but the enemy's units are now cut off from each other. Their logistics are broken, and movement is no longer possible for them.
According to Valentin Manko, Ukrainian forces are effectively pushing back the enemy, who is trying to lure Ukrainian forces away from Kursk. There is a catastrophic shortage of military equipment on the Russian side. The situation is so dire that Russian troops are seizing civilian vehicles even to disrupting logistics, and that is increasing their own losses. This is confirmed by agents of the Ukrainian partisan movement, Atesh.
According to our sources, there is a shortage not only of armored vehicles and cars, but even of regular motorcycles. The command has ordered the confiscation of transport from civilians, and incidents of theft among the troops have increased. One agent reported that in his unit, a motorcycle was stolen from a wounded soldier. He was left behind, and the vehicle was taken. From a telegram post by the Ukrainian partisan movement, Atesh.
Now, the other visible successes of our army on the front line: on the night of September 18th, Ukrainian Special Operation Forces targeted the logistics hub of Russia's 810th Separate Marine Brigade located in Kursk Oblast. The strike targeted a depot full of supplies, ammunition and equipment side of the enemy brigade. It tried to conceal, obviously unsuccessfully, though. The 810th Marine Brigade, famous, or better said, infamous, and based in occupied Sevastopol, was actively involved in offensive operation. Its personnel committed multiple war crimes, including the execution of Ukrainian prisoners of war. As a result of successful Ukrainian drone attacks, the massive RT-70 radio telescope in occupied Crimea, the one that previously was used for possible missions to Mars and Venus and for attempts even to contact extraterrestrial civilizations, was destroyed, according to media reports. Ukrainian Defense Forces disabled the 70-meter in diameter antenna to prevent its use by Russian forces for targeting attacks on Ukraine, and it was used exactly for that. The RT-70 had been under Russian control since the annexation of Crimea in 2014. According to Defense Express, the structure underwent major upgrades by Russia for use in military communications. The radio telescope also functioned as an antenna for the GLONASS satellite navigation system, Russia's equivalent of GPS. Reportedly, use of the RT-70 increased GLONASS accuracy by approximately 30%. Well, not anymore. The drone targeted a 200-kilowatt radio receiver located right at the center of the telescope. Analysts know about this receiver, custom-built in Moscow in 2011 during the telescope's last major upgrade, will be quite difficult for Russia to replace. This means the aggressor country will not be able anymore to repair the antenna anytime soon. Ukraine will soon begin deploying at least 1,000 interceptor drones per day to defend against massive drone attacks from Russia. This was announced on September 18th in Kyiv by Ukrainian Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal at a joint press conference with Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. According to Shmyhal, Russia now launches up to 800 drones per night, so Ukraine needs no fewer than 1,000 interceptor drones daily. The United Kingdom is launching mass production as well of Ukrainian-designed interceptor drones, which will be delivered to support the needs of the Ukrainian armed forces. Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal signed the relevant agreement with his British counterpart John Healey in London. Meanwhile, Russia is increasing its production of Shahed-type drones. Western media report that the occupiers may be able to produce also up to 1,000 drones per day, with further scaling expected in 2026. Andriy Kovalenko, head of Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation, explained that Western sources often confuse real Shaheds with decoy drones. Russia produces significantly more decoys as they are much, much cheaper. American Black Widow drones will receive a unique upgrade: Ukrainian artificial intelligence, tested in real combat conditions. The technology developed by Safe Pro Group is now integrated into Red Cat's Black Widow drones. The system, called Safe Pro Object Threat Detection, is an innovative algorithm capable of identifying over 150 types of explosive threats, including landmines, anti-personnel mines, cluster munitions, and unexploded shells even. What makes the development quite special is that the data is analyzed directly on board of the drone. The cameras capture live 4K video, which is immediately processed by the AI to classify potential threats. This allows the drones to operate autonomously without relying on internet connections or cloud services, a critical capability in combat conditions. US President Donald Trump said Russian leader Vladimir Putin had really let him down and urged US allies to stop buying oil from Moscow if they expect Washington to take further steps to pressure the Kremlin into ending the war in Ukraine. Quite simply, if oil prices fall, Putin will have no choice but to pull out of the war, Trump said Thursday after meeting with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. While noting he might consider additional measures against Russia, Trump made clear that such actions would depend on allies halting purchases of Russian energy. And when asked about the end to Russia's war against Ukraine, Trump simply replied that, I quote, Putin has let him down in this regard.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. Was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out. Donald Trump, President of the United States, during a press briefing.
Still, efforts to impose tougher energy measures faced resistance from EU states such as Hungary and Slovakia, leaving negotiations deadlocked and raising doubts about Trump's commitment to a united pressure campaign. Well, especially given his historically warm ties with dictator Putin. Starmer, for his part, said that some European countries remain overly dependent on Russian energy supplies. It is a challenge to Europe, he noted. There are still nations too reliant on Russia. Trump, though, clarified that the UK is not one of the culprits and said Starmer agreed that allies must stop buying oil from Russia. Donald Trump also said he believes that China has enough leverage over Moscow to potentially end Russia's war against Ukraine, but only if Europe takes tougher actions against Beijing. In an interview with Fox News, excerpts of which the White House later shared on X, Trump argued that sanctions or tariffs imposed by Europe on China could compel Beijing to act.
If they impose sanctions or tariffs, or however you want to call it, if they did that against China, I think the war might be over. China is the biggest buyer of Russian oil. Donald Trump, President of the United States, in an interview to Fox News.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent echoed Trump's view, telling Reuters and Bloomberg that the war in Ukraine could potentially end within 60 to 90 days if Europe introduced significant sanctions targeting buyers of Russian oil. Hard times have arrived for the Russian economy. Indeed, this fact is already openly acknowledged in the Kremlin. For example, Russia's Minister of Economic Development, Maxim Reshetnikov, stated in an interview with the Russian propaganda television channel that the government is noticing, we quote, worrying signs, end of quote, in the sector. Yulia Granovskaya, my colleague, will explain what that means.
The European Union is preparing its 19th package of sanctions against Russia. According to Politico, citing sources in Brussels, the new measures could be adopted as early as Friday, September 19th, or Monday, September 22nd.
There will be oil majors. There will be Russian banks. There will be crypto payment systems. There will be over 100 tankers. There will be special economic zones. There won't be oligarchs, at least not yet. And no new visa bans either, for now. But both issues are still on the table for the future. As for sovereign assets, there's an interesting concept of issuing a loan to Ukraine with repayment postponed until reparations are received. Let's see how discussions evolve. This would be a significant sum and a strong gesture of support. I'm glad our diplomacy is producing results. Vladislav Vlasiuk, Presidential Envoy of Ukraine for Sanctions Policy, on Facebook.
The EU is also working on additional restrictions targeting China and India, the two largest importers of Russian oil. Banks and refineries in both countries are expected to be added to the EU's blacklist. However, Brussels is not yet ready to impose extra tariffs on China and India, despite growing pressure from Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump recently criticized the EU for what he called not tough enough sanctions against Russia and its trading partners. Still, EU officials maintain that not all diplomatic avenues have been exhausted.
India's participation in Russia's military exercises and its purchase of Russian oil stand in the way of closer ties, because ultimately our partnership is not only about trade but also about defending rules-based international order. Our negotiations will address these challenges and with the aim of adopting a joint roadmap at the EU-India summit in early 2026, deepening the ties also with India in order to really not push them to the Russia's corner was the agreement by the college.
Only two EU member states, Slovakia and Hungary, continue to oppose a complete break from Russian energy supplies. Bratislava recently stated it would only consider a full transition if reliable alternatives and sufficient infrastructure are in place. Croatia has offered to help. According to Prime Minister Andrej Plenković, Hungary and Slovakia could replace Russian oil by using the Adriatic pipeline, which would cover their energy needs.
Slovakia imports around a third of its oil from non-Russian sources via the Adria pipeline through the Balkan region and Hungary, and has secured a series of flexible contracts with Western gas suppliers. Still, officials around Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, who has maintained his links to the Kremlin and visited Moscow, view Russian supplies as strategically important. Hungary regards EU sanctions against Russia as ineffective and will continue to block steps that threaten its supplies. Hungarian cabinet minister GLONASS said at a press briefing in Budapest from a Bloomberg publication.
The rest of the European Union is moving toward a gradual and complete phase-out of Russian energy as part of its effort to secure peace in Europe.
If you ask me and Denmark, it should be as tough as possible. So we are, behind any sanction which we can agree on, and it must be a full-fledged sanction package addressing circumvention, the shadow fleet, the financial sector, and then I would add, and Andrei also touched upon that, we also need stronger transatlantic cooperation.
According to Russia's own Ministry of Finance, oil revenues have declined steadily over the past 3 months. In June alone, they dropped by nearly 34% year-on-year. The ministry attributes this to lower global oil prices and a strengthening ruble. But in Brussels, Officials are convinced that EU sanctions have already cost Russia billions of dollars, and that the United States still has powerful tools to further pressure the aggressor into peace. Reported by Larissa Petruk, UATV News.
It was Henry Keane on UATV. Thank you for standing with Ukraine. Please subscribe so to stay tuned to whatever is happening in the world, given to you from Ukrainian perspective. Thank you. Goodbye.